So we are going to look at the 5 tips to mastering CSS, and the question will be, what is CSS? So in a nutshell, CSS is this cascading style sheet, and CSS is what we need to make our page, our web page, whatever you're building on the web, to come out well, to come out neatly, to look beautiful, to look appealing to our users, to make it look nice. So the CSS in a typical, let me an example to a building might be the color, the painting on a house, the decorations and all of that. So your web page is going to look beautiful with CSS, and it's important to really understand CSS. And we have a lot of things in CSS. We have a lot of CSS properties. That's so much properties to learn in CSS. So, but my goal with this is to kind of narrow down and focus on the ones that are very important, the ones that you get to use from day to day in building projects. And the first thing I would like to say is to read through the W3 school to kind of understand some of the basic CSS properties that we have that are common. Okay, the color, the background, the font size, the font weight, the text transform, the height. We have so many. So when I was starting out, what I did was to read through these sites, and it was very, very insightful. It really helped me to understand that we have so many CSS properties, and I can always come back to see or check the ones I need to use. But over the years, I've discovered that there are just some that you always use on every project you are working on, and that's the goal of this goal of this tip, to kind of bring it out. So once you have an understanding of some of these things, the ones that you use on daily basis on every project, then you can take your time to really master those things, and then others can always come in whenever you need them. So the first thing is, try as much as possible to go through this page. You don't have to master everything, but just to read through or scan through. So that would be my first thing to do. Alright, so the second thing is to understand the CSS units. So somebody might ask, what is CSS units? Yeah, so the CSS units might not look useful when you're starting. You get to understand the importance of CSS units when you're working, when you start building for multiple screens, when you're trying to make your design responsive. So that is where the understanding of CSS unit comes to play. So it's important to understand CSS units, and this page actually discuss or give an idea of what CSS unit is, and I've divided it into two. So we have the absolute units. So the absolute units are fixed, okay, they don't change, and then we have the relative units, which they are not fixed, they are relative to the screen size. So it's good to have an understanding of these two in order to make sure that whenever we are building, our page is responsive on both web and mobile and tablet. So this is also very, very important. So another thing to really learn and make sure that there's a good understanding is to have a good understanding of the CSS box model. So what is a box model? So the box model talks about, you have a content, and in the content you have the padding. So the padding is a space that you can add. So the padding is internal, the space you add to the content. So you have your HTML tag, your HTML elements. The padding is what you apply. So when you apply a padding to the HTML elements, you tend to have a space. So you can have padding top, padding left, padding bottom, padding right. And then we have the border. So the border represents like a fence, like a line that you can have around your HTML elements. And then you have the margin. So the margin is the space that is created externally. That is what the margin is. And then we have the box model here. Okay, so this is also very good to just kind of go through this, because it doesn't matter any project you are going to work on. These are things that you are going to use. These are CSS properties that you are always going to use, you are always going to need on your page. So having an understanding of this is very simple. All these CSS properties are very simple, but it's just good to have a very good understanding on how to use this property. And the next thing I will move on to is to talk about, this is by far the most important thing that I will advise anyone new to CSS to understand and take time to understand properly, is to understand the CSS layout structure. Okay, so this layout structure talks about you being able to position, elements at across your web page at any place you want the content to be, the element to be. So, and the two things that that one really needs to understand when it comes to the layout structure is to understand flexbox and understand grid. But most importantly, it is so much important to understand the flexbox, because with the flexbox you can do a lot of things. You can position elements on your web page, whether you want it on the top left, or whether you want it on the right, on the left bottom, anywhere, irrespective of where you want your content to be on your web page, you can achieve that with flexbox. So having a proper understanding of flexbox will make you to be a better developer. You make you being able to build any project that you have, any web page that you want to build. All right, so and then grid also is also very important. It has its own use case as well. So majorly, if I'm starting all over again, I will make sure that I take enough time, I spend a lot of time to understand CSS flexbox. And this page is a very good page to start. It gives a very good introduction to flexbox, and then we have other sub things that we can actually click here to get to understand flexbox more in detail. So this is very good. There's no project you are going to work on that you will not going to need flexbox. This is very important. In fact, the most important CSS property to really take time to understand is flexbox, because without it you cannot design properly. You cannot go about your layout structure on your web page properly. And then the last but not the least I'm going to be talking about is the responsive web design. So what is responsive web design? So the responsive web design is you making your web page look good on all devices. Okay, so it's still the same code that you're going to write, but you're making sure that the code looks good on the desktop, at the same time looks good on the tablet, and at the same time looks good on the mobile phone. So an example I'm going to use is to use this small mini project that I worked on, and we can see that this looks good, this looks nice on desktop, and by the time we check on mobile, so we are going to check on tablet now, we can see that still the same design, the same code base, and it still looks good. So this is the code and everything looks good. So I'm not writing two different code, it's still the same code. I mean, by the time we check on iPad Pro, still the same code and it still looks good. So we can check the desktop, see, still looks good and it's okay. And then we can check the mobile and it still looks good. So as somebody that wants to learn and master CSS, so taking time to understand responsive web design is very important, and you get to know it by using media query. Because let's go through the code. This is the HTML for the CSS. All I had to do was to use the media query and then begin to write styles to control the styles that apply at certain pixel. So this is how to go about it, and I believe that going through this part on W3 School it will kind of help to understand how to apply media query to our styling. And so these are there are a lot more CSS properties that we should learn, of course, but I believe that when we have understanding of this CSS property, we can get started on project, we can start working on projects, and as we start working on projects, we can now begin to learn other things that we need to learn alongside when we start working on project. But over the years, I found out that these are the most important things that I need to learn, and when I have a very good understanding of this, then every other thing is easy and is kind of easy. So, and the last thing or the final thing I'll say is to work on projects. build as much project as you can, build projects, and then go through a lot of code based on HTML and CSS. You know, try to read as many code base. When you see a code on CSS, try to read and understand what is done, and this way we can get to familiarize ourselves more with so many CSS properties that we may later need on any project that we are working on. So thank you, God bless, and you can drop your comment below. Thank you. Bye.